Welcome to Trailblazers and Titans with your host, Dr. Keith Haney. Trailblazers and Titans is your go-to podcast for insights, inspiration, and actionable advice from the world's most successful entrepreneurs and leaders. Each episode features in-depth interviews with industry pioneers, innovative thinkers, and business moguls who share their journeys, challenges, and strategies for success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned leader, or someone looking to make a significant impact, this podcast provides the tools and motivation to blaze your trail and become a titan in your field. Tune in to learn, grow, and transform your vision into reality.
My guest today is Dr. Josh McConkey. He is a Pulitzer Prize nominee, Telly Award winner, best-selling author, and nationally respected emergency physician with over 20 years of clinical experience. A former professor at Duke University, he remains board-certified in emergency medicine and is known for his calm leadership under pressure, whether in the ER or on the battlefield. With 22 years of decorated military service, Dr. Josh currently commands the 459th Aeromedical Staging Squadron in the U.S. Air Force Reserves, where he leads critical medical readiness and deployment operations. His dual role in medicine and military service reflect a lifelong commitment to service, leadership, and resilience. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to education, character development, and community service, he was inducted into the Alliance Nebraska Public Schools Hall of Fame in 2022, and honored with the 2023 Distinguished Alumni Award from Cauldron State College. A devoted husband and father of three, Josh lives in Apex, North Carolina with his wife Elsa. Together they are on a mission to shape the next generation of American leaders through faith, mentorship, and action. His leadership ethos, "Be the weight behind the spear," challenges today's leaders to stand in the gap for their communities and be a force of unity, character, and purpose in a divided world. We welcome him to the podcast. Well, Josh, it's good to have you on the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing very good. Thank you very much.
It's great to have you on. Looking forward to this conversation. I've been waiting for this for a while. We share a lot of similar values, I think, so I think we'll have a great conversation.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you my favorite question I ask all my guests, though. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Boy, the best piece of advice. Don't put stock in criticism that you wouldn't, from those who you wouldn't take advice from.
Okay.
So basically, all these Twitter trolls and all these people, don't put any stock in that criticism. If these aren't people that you wouldn't seek out and seek their advice, then it doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. And that's so true because we live in an age now where I think it's really impacting our kids a lot because they get all that feedback and there's no way to filter it in terms of, whether it's good or not. And it can be so destructive. That's really good advice. I like that. I may have to borrow that and say,
yeah, please do.
After a while, as Keith always says. So I'm curious, think about your journey and people who've been really impactful for you. Who were some mentors along the way for you, or maybe people who inspired you in your journey?
I've had some great mentors. In the military, I've had some wonderful commanders. There was a Colonel Petty when I was in Iraq. I was a very impressionable young captain straight out of residency. And boy, he had some great words of advice that really shaped me into a leader and the commander that I am today. And my grandfather had a lot to do, with helping me develop my faith. When I was a young child, I got into a lot of trouble and literally basically failed out of Sunday school, where you're going through and for confirmation, you have to memorize all these different passages. And he really sat me down and just took that personal time with me. And when he did that, I realized how important that was. And it had everything to do with my faith right now. So
that's really powerful. Kind of tell us a little bit about your journey into emergency medicine, into the military service. What inspired you to pursue both of those?
So I was born in the 1970s, right? So 1977, and had always looked up to Vietnam veterans. That's what I was raised on, watching Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, and you saw how the country was really fractured at that time. And when you see what it's like to fight a war when you don't have the weight behind America's spear behind you, I always had tremendous respect for those individuals, and that's one of the reasons that I served. And then on the emergency medicine side, I'm an adrenaline junkie, so that naturally gravitated towards the sort of the trauma and some of the crazy things that you see in the emergency department. So those two things, I've been very fortunate to be able to put those careers together.
As you think about the emergency aspect of that, what are some of the things you've noticed and changes in the system now than when you maybe first started out?
So I was lucky enough to be able to work in medicine before electronic health records.
Okay.
So back when you used to sit down with patients and spend time with patients, and everything wasn't a metric and a box that you're clicking on your health record. So, I spent probably 80% of my time or more physically sitting with patients and talking. You could fill out a paper chart while you're chatting with the patient. And now it's, you spend 60 or 70% of your time just on these computers clicking boxes. And I understand that, having those records available does lead to some better healthcare decisions when you're like moving around, and because you kind of fracture those healthcare decisions amongst different hospitals and providers. But you've really lost those relationships with patients because you just don't get the time with them. And it's not been fun.
Yeah, I noticed I had another guest on who's in the medical profession. She says part of the struggle she has is if you get a negative report in your records from a previous doctor, like you're a difficult patient because you won't do certain things with medication. If there's not that conversation with the doctor to kind of get a chance to know you may just get all your impression of the patient from the records and not actually from talking to the patients.
Yeah, it's, it can kind of color how you interact with patients and how you kind of have those, especially in the emergency department where you've got very little time.
Right.
I just do a quick review of that chart before I go into the room. And if there's a flag that pops up, like, difficult patient or, drug-seeking patient, it really kind of colors that initial interaction with the patient. It helps you with some decisions, but it probably hurts you in some situations as well.
Right, I can imagine. I'm curious. I love leadership, but tell me what it's like to lead under pressure. And if you're in the ER, I'm assuming it's high pressure. The military is the same thing. What's it like making decisions under pressure?
So for me, the emergency medicine side of things and in combat, I served in Iraq in 2007. Just those times under pressure, things are sharper for me. So some people can just operate under that type of pressure. Some can't. Emergency medicine, generally, that adrenaline junkie, you're seeking those high risk, high reward situations, and you can just think well under pressure. Some people just can't do that. Now, there is ways in which you can hone those skills and work on those skills. But for a lot of people, you either have those skills or you don't. And on the leadership side on the military side, it's really all those mentors and the things that you've been through in the past all make up who you are as a leader now. I'm a commander right now in the Air Force. So.
Wow, that's cool. So let's talk about your book, Be the Weight Behind the Spear. What motivated you to write that book? So over the past several years, I've just seen some changes in healthcare and in our military servicemen and women, specifically as an emergency doctor. So this generation is a generation that these young 18 to 25-year-olds, we've, had some decisions that were made, some policy decisions that, doesn't do any good to pass the blame, but here's the facts. So you shut these kids out of school, you shut them out of church, you shut them out of their communities for several years during their really formative years. And as a result, they've had a significant increase in mental health issues. And there's a mental health crisis in this country. So as an emergency doctor, I see the anxiety, the depression, the suicides, unfortunately. And I see those same issues as a military commander in this age group. They lack resiliency skills. They fold at a moment's notice. And I just realized that somebody has to do something. Because this is what I'm seeing. Otherwise, I just go to work every day and I just feel like I'm beating my head against the wall, doing the same thing over and over and over. But in writing the book, I felt empowered and I'm getting this message, my prescription to fix that problem. And it's been very well received. So I feel very blessed. So I've heard that term before, tip of the spear. What's tip of the spear metaphor for you in the book?
Yes. So to really understand what it means to be the weight behind the spear, you got to understand what that spear is. The tip of the spear. So I've been really fortunate to work with special operations. I was medical director for PJs, like pararescue, combat search and rescue. And these individuals do crazy things that no one else on planet Earth can do. They jump out of helicopters and airplanes behind enemy lines in the most dangerous environments you can imagine, saving lives and doing great things. I don't jump out of helicopters for the most part unless I really, really have to. And I don't take lives, I save lives as a physician. But every one of these individuals has someone in their life that gave them the amazing confidence. It's their teachers and coaches, families, their colleagues around them. That's the weight behind the spear. And that's what makes these individuals so impressive, and just really those skills that they have. It's all about the weight behind it. And that's the tip of the spear.
Love it. You talk about in this book ethical living and personal responsibility, and use a lot of personal anecdotes and reflections about how ordinary citizens can contribute to the national strength by supporting leaders and fostering unity. Tell us about some of the anecdotes that you used in the book that really resonated with you.
Oh boy. So some great stories. You talk about, people recognize good leadership. Sometimes it's hard to define that until you've seen some really bad leaders.
Right.
And one of the examples, I had a CEO at a hospital. So I had part ownership in a freestanding emergency department in Texas. And the CEO was doing some very, very shady things. I had actually applied for a national security position on the National Security Council. I do EMS, like FEMA disaster medicine. I'm fellowship board certified. So there was an opportunity. And as I applied for that, there's a lot of top secret security questions, and all the business issues I knew were clearly a problem. So this CEO, man, he was embezzling money. He was writing off a lawsuit that involved some sexual harassment issues from another business through our business. He was siphoning off money from payroll, $130,000 he overcharged us. And at the end, he just straight up stole $650,000 out of the bank account for back management expenses. And, I went to him and I was like, hey, I can't be a part of this. I have a security clearance. I'm applying for this top secret, level clearance. And he offered me a $3.4 million bribe. So unfortunately for him, he found the one guy on planet Earth that would turn down $3.4 million, because my integrity is very important to me. I told him, listen, I'm a colonel in the United States Air Force. I will not compromise that integrity for one penny. And unfortunately, he went a little berserk. He tried to bankrupt the company. He ran it straight into the ground, literally just to spite me. Refused to pay bills. And by the end of it, I found out that he had done this through many other businesses where he has them all sign their non-disclosure agreements, and gives them the money, gives them the bribe, and they all walk away. But he found the one guy that wouldn't do that. So he actually threatened the family. We moved to Australia for a year to get away from him. I filed a lawsuit during COVID to stop him from bankrupting the company, but it was right in the middle of COVID, and we couldn't even get a court date. Unfortunately, it did not work out well for me, and I lost about $5 million, but my integrity is intact. And, those are just some difficult situations that you have to deal with, and know what your red lines are, and don't cross them. Don't compromise your integrity.
So that's one of the key issues or themes in your book is true leadership requires moral backbone and integrity. How do you help leaders understand how critical that is to effective leadership?
Boy, it's all about trust. And when you're working with men and women that you're asking to do difficult things, and I've flown in combat, I flew some medevac missions and one air assault in Iraq. I didn't have to fly that, as the flight surgeon, but how could I ask my men and women to do those things, those combat medics flying, if I wasn't willing to do that myself and understand what they're going through? So it's all about trust. And if they see you stepping up and making those difficult decisions, and they see where your red lines are and how important you make that integrity and ownership, resiliency, all those types of skills, if you're modeling those and they trust you, you're going to get a lot better results from your people. So it's what you model. They see what you do.
So you can't teach integrity. Obviously, like the guy you just talked about, he didn't have integrity. So how do you get people who are trying to develop their integrity to kind of pour into that more?
So, with my children, it's just having lived that and talking about things like that at the dinner table. Sometimes it's just sitting down as a group. Like for my family, we do that at the dinner table. We ask about the day, what went well, what didn't go well. Are there some different decisions that could be made, that would have changed the outcome of that day? Doing that with your colleagues and the people that you're working with, just having that open dialogue and be able to discuss those things. Don't have a big ego. I mean, I let everybody, when I walk into a room, everyone stands to attention. I get salutes. That's great. We have some customs and courtesies in the military, but I always keep that door open, and individually, please come in, talk to me, let me know if there's something you disagree with. We can talk about it. If I can't sit down and explain my reasoning to you, then I probably don't have a very good reason. So just being open and honest and having that dialogue, not having a monster ego, that will help with those.
Let's move on to resilience. I love this idea of resilience. It's been a topic that's come up with a lot recently. How do you demonstrate resilience and dedication to inspire others in leadership? As a leader, how do you build resilience in your company and your team?
So starting with giving people, you empower them to make decisions. You can't micromanage. In doing that, they are going to make some mistakes, and those are all great learning opportunities. It's no different than how I think different generations have been raised by parents. So, earlier generations, you did have some helicopter parents that just like to hover and try to micromanage everything. Now we have the lawnmower parents, and these lawnmower parents mow down every obstacle in their child's path. And as a result, the kid encounters no obstacles. They don't know how to make decisions. They're not allowed to make mistakes. And so that's why when they come into pressure situations or they're out in real life, they just fold. They have zero resiliency skills. So you have to allow people to make decisions. You have to allow them to make some mistakes, do it safely with some guardrails. Don't let them make some crazy mistakes that we can't recover from. But if you're, as a leader, if you're micromanaging, then you made a bad decision. You chose the wrong person, or you're not developing them. So you have to take responsibility as a leader, and got to let them make mistakes. That's how they learn. That's how they build resiliency. That's what they do in basic training, right? They break you down and they build you back up. That's what it's no different in business.
Yeah, my son's in military. We talked about his his basic training and how different that was. I'm curious, if you run across a generation that has not gone through that, how do you get them to have the courage to go take chance? Because if you haven't done that before, it's not something that's natural to you. So how do you get a generation maybe that hasn't experienced that to kind of do that, like you talked about, with safeguards in place so that they can build that resilience?
So that is definitely the challenge that we're working with right now, because right now this is the generation that has not had those skills and abilities. And it had a lot to do with while they were in high school and then early college. It was not good for their mental health and development to just shut them out from everything around them. So there's an entire cohort that had no prom, no senior sports or senior events, no high school graduation. And then that same group, there's some of them who didn't even have their college graduations because of some, current events and things that were going on. That's huge. I mean, I think about my life and some of those formative, those core memories, right? You take those away from people, and wow, we're seeing the result of that now. So that's the challenge. We have to find a way through their big tie where their entire identity is tied to social media and this more artificial world. We've got to find a way to get back face to face with them, to get them engaged and get some ownership in whatever organization they're a part of. They have to have that ownership and feel like they're part of that team. You've got to find a way through. You have to find a way to overcome that, or they're just not going to be successful. So there's definitely a lot of work to do.
I have kids on both ends of the spectrum. I have a son who didn't have a high school graduation or a normal freshman year of college, and a daughter who graduated from college in that COVID year too. So she didn't have a graduation and was kind of virtual. So yeah, I can understand both sides of that coin from personal experience.
Yeah, there's that whole generation. So there's some great studies that up to 70% of that Gen Z, that COVID generation, that last half of Gen Z, kind of has a mistrust of their government and institutions for those very reasons. And that's why it's so important to get out there, reach out and touch someone, have some face-to-face interactions. We got to build that trust back.
I love that. I love this quote in your book, and I want to kind of get your input on it. You say every citizen has a role to play in the nation's destiny. It's our collective effort that propels us forward. Tell us more about what you meant by that quote.
That's being the weight behind the spear. what you do every single day matters. People discount their role, right? Oh, national security, or the government's just going to take care of that, or the government's going to solve all these problems. No, no, they are not. It has to be you. It's at the community level. So you need to get out there. Everyone has a different skill. So some people are really great with people. Some people don't like to work with people. There's something for you. So whether you get out and coach in Little League, or you volunteer in your church or your school, or maybe you're the person that doesn't like people, go to the animal shelter and work on that, because those animals can be emotional support animals for somebody. So there's so many organizations in your community. We are a social being, right? For thousands and thousands of years. That's what makes us human. That's our humanity. And it doesn't just go away because we have social media and we shut everything down for a couple of years. We have to get back to that. People have to know that what they do matters, and then empower them to do it.
What do you say to the person? I've heard this so many times in my life before. I am not a leader. What do you say to the person who believes they're not a leader?
Boy, I had a great question. It was one of my book readings. I was at Barnes & Noble, and this guy was just getting ready to start a leadership for business. He didn't feel like he was ready, and he asked the question, are you ever ready to be a leader? And the answer is no. You're never ready. Like, no one is just born ready to be a leader. These are skills that do have to be learned and developed, and you have to be just willing, all right? You're not going to be a leader unless you want to be a good leader. And you have to just jump into it. You're going to make some mistakes, ask a lot of questions, don't have a big ego, learn from everybody around you. That's the bad leaders. When you think of bad leaders, it's always the people with the big egos that won't take advice from everybody, and they're a big know-it-all. They don't know their limitations. Those don't make good leaders. So you have to get out there and just jump into it. And through trial and error, you will become a good leader. Just remember the good leaders, remember the bad leaders. Just don't be the bad one.
Right. So you started a foundation based on your name of your book, Be the Weight Behind the Spear. What's the mission and vision of your foundation?
So the mission of the Weight Behind the Spear Foundation is to promote community engagement. It's to, like right now, we're doing fundraising for Western North Carolina, just destroyed by Hurricane Helene last September. And there's still a lot of damage, and there is still a lot of recovery to be done. So we've been, raising money, promoting awareness, and we've been working with Samaritan's Purse, which is a great faith-based organization that does a lot of great things for a lot of areas of the country and the world. But in Western North Carolina, they've been very involved, and proud to be a part of that.
That's great. Man, so what's next for you? You've got the book, you've got the foundation. What's on the horizon that's next for you?
For me, I see these bad policy decisions that have been made and some things that I've disagreed with. I'm running for politics.
Oh, wow.
So I've declared my run for lieutenant governor here in North Carolina, and I feel that we need some more conservative values, some bold leadership, purpose-driven leadership. I just disagree with a lot of the policies that have been made over the past couple of years. I see the results of that, with the anxiety, the depression, the suicide in this younger generation, and we're going to do something about that.
So here's your chance. What's your platform you're going to promote in your run?
It's very simple: security, safety, and service. It's a security in your community, in your family, in your faith. Parental rights is really big. And it's just safety, securing borders. Every state's a border state. I don't think a lot of people realize that. But all the fentanyl and just some of these illegal substances coming across these unsecured borders, they're doing much better now. Thank goodness this current administration has a much different take on things. It's getting much better. But those don't just stop at the border. And that's what I see in my emergency department. I see a lot of overdose deaths, and I see how that affects families. And just like service to your community, first responders, teachers. My wife's a teacher. My mom's a teacher. Education is critically important. So when you talk just those simple 3 S's, I think most people can understand that, and it resonates well. And that's what we're going to focus on.
How do you balance all that you do with your faith and your family?
It's because of the faith and the family. And that's what motivates me every single day. So when I wake up, Generally, the first thing I think about is how lucky I am to be alive. I I carried body bags off the battlefields of Iraq, and I took care of some of the men and women that have made the ultimate sacrifice for this country. I feel very blessed to be alive, and I have a family and a wonderful wife and 3 kids. What can we do to make sure that's maintained? And so that's what I wake up and try to do every day. If that takes working long, crazy hours and running a lieutenant governor campaign, or getting out there and promoting the book and getting involved in other organizations, doing the nonprofit, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I feel obligated to do things that those men and women can no longer do. And I value what they've given to this country, and we're gonna keep on going.
If you could speak to young professionals aspiring either in the medical or military careers, what advice would you give them?
America needs you. It has to be you. Just look at yourself in the mirror. That's the only person that's going to solve the problems of this country. It has to be you. What you do matters every day. Everybody is blessed with certain skills. Use those skills. Don't use them to take advantage of other people. Use them to make this country a better place, whether that's volunteering or starting a business, or getting involved in your church or your school. We need you. America needs you.
I love it. I love to ask my guests this other question. This is the bookend of the first question. What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy, I want my children, I want my grandchildren to just be proud of what I've done. So when I wake up and think about them and the men and women that I carried off the battlefields, we have to leave this country better off than how we found it. And that's more maybe special operations or a military mindset. Wherever you've been, make sure it's better than how you found it. And you got to leave it for that future generation. So I hope my family, and I know my children do. My son, actually, it was a couple of years ago, but he came home and had won this integrity award at school. And it was really special for me, because having gone through that really difficult business, it was a couple of years of crazy litigation, and it literally threatened us. We had to move to Australia. It was really bizarre, but standing firm and not compromising on that integrity. Your kids are watching. They see what you do. And it was nice to see that it's rubbing off on the kids. And that's the legacy that I want to leave, is, for my children and grandchildren and, everybody else in the country. So, well, I think it's going well so far.
Well, good. As we wrap up this conversation, what key takeaways do you want to leave with the audience, kind of to summarize what we talked about today?
Yeah, just, be the weight behind someone or something that matters. Everyone, there's people with different beliefs. There's people that have different priorities, but get out there and get involved. Make your community a better place. Volunteer, churches, schools, animal shelters. There's so many different organizations that need you, that what you do every single day matters. So be that weight behind the spirit in your community.
Where can people find your book and connect with you on social media?
Thank you. So it's available on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble, anywhere where you can find books. There's an audio book, there's an ebook, and then the paperback. You can learn more at weightbehindthespear.com, WEIGHT, weightbehindthespear.com.
Well, Josh, thanks so much for taking the time for writing this book, because I think it's so critical. I love books on leadership, especially ones that focus on integrity and letting everybody know that you are a leader, no matter what field you're in, no matter what career you're doing, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you are in the corporate world, you are leading someone. You have influence, because leadership is all about influence. So how do you use your sphere of influence to shape and direct the next generation and your own individual piece in the world? So thank you for reminding us that we all have an important, critical role to play in the growth of our children, our communities, our families, and our impact.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thanks for pointing that out. Just in your own household, that is the most important role, being a parent, mother, father. That's the biggest role out there. It's the best job.
You never know if you're raising your next George Washington or not. So you just never know.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, thanks so much. And blessings on your run for Lieutenant Governor. I hope to see you soon. I can say I had him on before he was Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. God bless.
Blessings to you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Trailblazers and Titans. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the insights shared, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you the stories of the world's most inspiring leaders. Don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and exclusive content. Join our community of trailblazers and titans, and let's continue to learn, grow, and transform our visions into reality together. Until next time, keep blazing your trail and striving for greatness.